Before we begin, take a second to like the video if you enjoy cinematic sci-fi stories, subscribe for weekly HFY uploads, and comment below with the question every alien in this room should have asked sooner. How many kills is too many? The bar on Kepri Station was built to survive riots, boarding actions, and the occasional species feud that escalated into plasma fire. It had survived all of them, but it had never learned to enjoy laughter. Tonight, laughter rolled across its scarred metal walls anyway, thick and ugly, the kind that grew from confidence sharpened into cruelty. The crowd was a mosaic of predators. Chitin scraped against steel stools. Scales caught the amber light. Augmented limbs hummed softly as their owners drank and bragged and measured one another by scars, trophies, and confirmed kills displayed on glowing implants. This was a place where survival was currency and reputation bought you silence. It was not a place where humans came anymore. So when the door hissed open and a hooded figure stepped inside, the laughter only paused out of confusion. He was human. Well, average height. No visible augments. No escort. No insignia. The kind of man the galaxy had learned to stop fearing decades ago. His cloak was dark and travel-worn, the hood pulled low enough to shadow his face, and the only thing he carried was a small satchel slung over one shoulder. He walked in like the room belonged to someone else, and he did not intend to argue with them about it. The bartender, a thick-bodied Draxian with 4 eyes and a long memory, watched him cross the floor. Human still triggered something old in the Draxian's mind. Not fear. Not respect. Caution, the kind you developed after surviving a war you were no longer allowed to talk about. The human stopped at the bar and spoke softly. His voice was calm, unhurried, and unmistakably tired. "Something strong," he said. "Something simple." The bartender hesitated for half a second too long. That was all it took. Did it speak? Someone barked from the far end of the counter. Laughter erupted again, louder this time. A cluster of Varnak mercenaries leaned back in their seats, tusked mouths open in wide, mirthful grins. One of them tapped the glowing tally marks pulsing beneath his translucent skin, each mark a confirmed kill recognized by the coalition. They shimmered proudly like metals that could not be taken away. "Careful," another voice chimed in. "He might poison us with nostalgia." More laughter. A few patrons glanced over, curious but unconcerned. Humans were a novelty now. A reminder of a species that had burned bright, fought hard, and learned too late that the galaxy did not reward moral endurance. The human did not respond. He placed a few credits on the bar, old-style alloy discs instead of a digital transfer. The bartender noticed that detail too. As the drink was poured, a massive figure pushed away from a nearby table. The warlord's armor was ceremonial and functional in equal measure, etched with campaign sigils and kill glyphs that climbed his torso in neat, proud rows. He strode closer, the floor vibrating under his weight, and loomed beside the human. "You know," the warlord said, voice amplified by an implanted resonator, "this is a veteran's house. We earn our drinks here." The human lifted his glass and took a sip. He winced slightly, not in displeasure but in recognition. "Seems fair," he said. The warlord squinted. "What did you earn, little ghost?" That earned another wave of laughter. The human set the glass down gently. When he rested his forearm on the bar, the sleeve of his cloak slid back just enough to reveal skin. There were lines there. Not glowing. Not implanted. Thin, pale scars etched directly into flesh. They ran in tight, careful rows along his wrist, disappearing beneath the fabric again when he adjusted his stance. A few of the closest patrons noticed. One leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What's that?" the warlord asked, following the gaze. The human looked at his own arm as if momentarily surprised to find it attached to him. "That," he said. "Nothing important." The warlord laughed, a deep, booming sound. "Decoration then. Humans always did like symbols." "Sometimes," the human replied. The bartender felt the mood shift. It was subtle, like a pressure change before a hull breach. Conversations nearby slowed. A scholar species observer at the edge of the room tilted their head, eyes focusing not on the scars themselves, but on their spacing. Their breath caught. Kill marks were common across the galaxy, but they followed standards. digital verification, ceremonial spacing, cultural symmetry. What they were seeing on the human's arm was none of that. The lines were uneven, hand-carved, some closer together than others, as if time had mattered when they were made. The warlord waved a claw dismissively. You come into a place like this wearing rags and ghosts and you expect respect? The human finally looked up at him. His eyes were clear. Not defiant. Not afraid. Simply present. I didn't come for respect, he said. I came for a drink. The warlord sneered. Then drink and leave before you embarrass yourself. The human picked up the glass again. As he did, the sleeve slid back a second time, revealing more of the marks than before. The room leaned in without realizing it had done so. Someone started counting. They stopped at 20. Then they started over. The human took another sip, unbothered, while the laughter died piece by piece, replaced by something colder. The bartender's hand hovered near the emergency lock. The scholar swallowed hard. The human finished his drink and exhaled slowly, as if savoring the moment not for triumph but for quiet. Relax, he said gently, sensing the shift. I'm off duty. No one laughed this time. And for the first time that night, the galaxy began to wonder what it had forgotten about humans, and why this one preferred it that way. Silence settled into the bar like sediment after an explosion, slow and inescapable. The warlord remained standing, but his posture had shifted, weight no longer forward, shoulders no longer squared for dominance. He had noticed what the others had noticed, and more importantly, he had noticed how quickly the room had begun to measure the human differently. Those lines, he said, forcing a chuckle that failed to convince even himself. You expect us to believe those mean something? The human rested his forearm fully on the bar this time. He did not roll up his sleeve. He did not display himself. He simply stopped hiding. The scars ran farther than most had assumed, disappearing beneath fabric and reappearing near the base of his thumb, each line thin, deliberate, and permanent. They mean exactly what they look like, the human said. A Varnak mercenary scoffed. Kills? With no registry? No witness marks. The human nodded once. Confirmed. A low murmur rippled through the room. Confirmed kills without a registry were a contradiction in galactic doctrine. Even pirates documented their tallies. Even monsters wanted to be remembered. The scholar at the edge of the bar finally spoke, voice tight with restraint. Those are not ceremonial cuts, they said. They're operational. Each mark represents a completed elimination cycle, not a single target. Several heads turned sharply. The warlord's mandibles flexed. That's absurd. Is it? The scholar replied. Look at the spacing. Some are closer together. Some farther apart. That suggests variable duration, not individual combat. Campaigns, not duels. The human did not interrupt. He watched his glass, rotating it slowly against the bar, listening like a man hearing an old story told incorrectly and deciding whether to correct it. Who taught you that? The warlord demanded, eyes narrowing at the scholar. Your military archives, they said quietly. The sealed ones. The ones redacted after the Kesserine collapse. The name hit the room like a dropped weapon. Conversations died completely now. Even the augmented veterans, bristling with confidence moments earlier, had gone still. The human finally looked up. You should stop, he said to the scholar, not unkindly. They swallowed. I'm sorry, they said. But it matches. The numbers. The methods. Humans were deployed where coalition forces failed. Black zones. Denied theaters. If those marks are what I think they are. The warlord took a step back without realizing it. The Kesserine collapse was a myth, he snapped. An ecological disaster. The human smiled faintly. It was not a pleasant expression. Everything is an accident, he said, if you bury the report deep enough. The bartender reached under the counter and thumbed the manual lock. The doors sealed with a muted thud. A few patrons glanced back in alarm. You trapping us in here with him? Someone hissed. The bartender did not look away from the human. No, he said. I'm keeping others out. That earned him several startled looks, but no one argued. The warlord's voice dropped. How many? he asked, gesturing at the scars despite himself. The human considered the question. Depends how you count. By the lines, the warlord said. That's how this works. The human's gaze hardened just a fraction. That's how it works for you. He lifted his arms slightly, exposing a longer stretch of skin. The marks continued, wrapping around the wrist, disappearing beneath the sleeve, resurfacing near the elbow. There were more than anyone had first assumed. Far more. Someone began counting again, lips moving silently. They stopped sooner this time. No species survives that many campaigns, a mercenary muttered. Not without reinforcement cycles. Not without rotation. The human's eyes flicked to him. We rotated, he said. Just not out. A chill passed through the room. The scholar stepped closer, drawn by something between horror and awe. You were part of the ghost allocations, they said. Weren't you? The human did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was level. That's not what we called ourselves. What did you call yourselves? The warlord asked. The human drained the last of his drink. Survivors. The warlord stared at him, then barked a laugh that rang hollow. Even if that were true, even if you were there, that was decades ago. Humans are finished. Your kind retreated. The human set the empty glass down. We didn't retreat, he said. We were recalled. For what? Someone asked. The human met their gaze. To be forgotten. The implication landed with a weight no armor could deflect. Forgotten weapons were the most dangerous kind. No treaties accounted for them. No threat models included them. The warlord straightened, forcing his confidence back into place like ill-fitting armor. You expect us to fear a relic? The human stood. Chairs scraped back as nearby patrons instinctively gave him space. He was unremarkable in size, still unaugmented, still dressed like a drifter, but the room now understood that none of that had ever been the point. I don't expect anything, he said. I just don't like being laughed at. For a long moment no one spoke. Then, from somewhere beyond the sealed doors, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, accompanied by the unmistakable hum of powered weapons. The human tilted his head slightly, listening, and for the first time that night, there was anticipation in his eyes. Looks like my drink bought me some company, he said. And the galaxy's laughter finally ran out of breath. The footsteps outside multiplied, overlapping rhythms carried through the bulkheads with professional precision. Whoever was approaching did not hurry. They did not need to. The sound alone was meant to announce inevitability. The warlord's gaze flicked toward the sealed doors, then back to the human. You bring hunters to my house? He growled. The human shook his head once. No, he said. They followed the noise. The scholar retreated a step, mind racing. Who would risk boarding a neutral station for one man? Someone who remembers, the human replied. The first impact hit the doors like a hammer wrapped in thunder. The locks held, but the bar shuddered. Glassware rattled. A few patrons reached instinctively for weapons, then hesitated, glancing at the human as if awaiting instruction they would never receive. The bartender leaned closer to him. You want me to open it? He asked quietly. Not yet, the human said. Another blow struck harder. Warning lights flickered along the ceiling. The warlord's mandibles twitched. You expect us to believe this is about you? The human looked at him, expression unreadable. It always is. The scholar's voice shook despite their effort to control it. The ghost allocations weren't a unit, they said. They were a contingency. Humans deployed without extraction windows, without diplomatic cover. Entire campaigns erased because acknowledging them would have meant admitting desperation. The human's eyes remained on the door. Desperation was the point. A breach charge detonated. The doors peeled inward with a scream of tortured metal, collapsing in on themselves. Smoke rolled into the bar, sharp with ozone and scorched alloys. Shapes moved within it, tall and armored, visors glowing with tactical data. Targets acquired, a voice crackled through external speakers. Human male confirmed. The patrons scattered, diving for cover behind tables and pillars. The warlord roared in fury and confusion, drawing his weapon too late to matter. The human stepped forward instead. He moved without urgency, as though greeting an inconvenience rather than an execution squad. His hand dipped into his satchel and emerged empty. He raised it slowly, palm open. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. By order of the coalition remnant, the lead attacker announced, weapon trained squarely on his chest. "You are to be detained for debrief and termination." The human nodded. "That sounds familiar." The first shot fired. It missed him by a margin too precise to be luck. The human shifted half a step, letting the energy bolt scorch the air where his heart had been a breath earlier. In the same motion, his other hand snapped up, gripping the attacker's rifle barrel and redirecting the second shot into the ceiling. What followed unfolded too quickly for the room to fully comprehend. The human closed distance with efficiency honed by repetition. He used bodies as cover and weapons interchangeably, striking joints, severing power lines, exploiting the rigid confidence of soldiers trained to fight anything except someone who refused to behave like prey. A blade flashed into his hand, not ceremonial, not advanced, just sharp. One attacker went down without a sound. Another screamed as their armor locked mid-step, systems overridden by a device the human slapped into place and left behind. The warlord watched, stunned, as the human moved through the squad like an answer correcting a long-standing error. There was no rage in him. No thrill. Only completion. Within seconds, the floor was littered with disabled armor and bodies that did not rise again. Smoke thinned. Alarms wailed distantly, too late to matter. The human stood alone amid the aftermath, breathing steady. He wiped the blade clean on a fallen soldier's cloak and returned it to his satchel. The bartender stared. "They came to kill you," he said. The human shrugged. "They always do." The scholar stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. "Those weren't bounty hunters. Those were enforcement." "Yes," the human said. "They finally admitted I exist." The warlord found his voice again, quieter now. "Why now?" The human looked down at his arm. The scars were visible again, stark against his skin. "Because I stopped hiding." He reached into his satchel and withdrew a small tool, no larger than a stylus. With practiced ease, he pressed it against his forearm and carved a new line beside the others. Blood welled briefly, then stopped. The act was neither ritual nor display. It was bookkeeping. The room watched in horrified silence. "That wasn't a kill mark," the scholar said, realization dawning. "That was a campaign marker." The human capped the tool and slid it away. "They came as a unit," he said. "They ended as a mistake." Distant sirens grew louder now. The station was waking up, too slow, too late. The human picked up his satchel and turned toward the back of the bar. The warlord swallowed. "What happens now?" he asked. The human paused at the threshold and glanced back. His eyes held no malice, only certainty. "Now," he said, "they remember why they tried to erase us." And somewhere beyond the station's hull, the galaxy began to count again. The station's internal alarms rose in pitch, cycling through emergency tones that spoke of authority scrambling to reclaim relevance. Bulkhead shutters slammed down in distant corridors. Automated warnings echoed in half a dozen languages, all advising calm while quietly admitting none would be provided. The human did not hurry. He moved through a service passage lit by flickering strips, boots silent against the deck. The satchel rode easy on his shoulder, weight balanced by long habit. Behind him, Kepri Station convulsed as security forces redeployed, but none of them were converging on him yet. They were still deciding what story to tell themselves about what had just happened. At the end of the passage, the exit irised open to reveal the station's central concourse. It was wide, vaulted, designed to impress traders and diplomats alike. Tonight, it was crowded with armed figures wearing mismatched insignia but unified purpose. Not station security. Not coalition. Privateers. Their leader stood at the center, tall and narrow, face hidden behind a reflective helm etched with contract sigils. A bounty broker's colors adorned his armor, polished and confident. He raised a hand as the human stepped into view. "There he is," the broker said calmly. "The ghost with the scars." Weapons rose in unison, barrels tracking the human center mass. Civilians scattered behind barricades and kiosks, eyes wide with fear and fascination. "You're outnumbered," the broker continued, "and worth more than this station intact." The human stopped several paces away. "That number's outdated," he said. The broker laughed softly. "You think I don't know who you are? The coalition wants you erased. Half the underworld wants you dissected. The other half wants proof you bleed." The human glanced around, taking in angles, cover, sight lines. His gaze lingered on the broker last. "You should have stayed in the bar," he said. The broker tilted his head. "You killed enforcement. That changes the calculus." "No," the human replied. "It confirms it." The broker gave a sharp gesture. The firing line tightened. "Last chance," he said. "Surrender." The human exhaled slowly, a ritual older than fear. "I don't surrender," he said. "I outlast." He moved. The concourse erupted into chaos. The human sprinted toward cover as energy fire tore through the space he had occupied a moment earlier. He slid behind a cargo loader, slapping a device onto its frame. The loader lurched to life, rolling forward on heavy treads, becoming mobile cover. Privateers advanced with disciplined aggression, spreading out, cutting angles. They were good. That was the problem. Good soldiers expected symmetry. The human offered none. He vaulted over the loader as it exploded, timing the blast to throw shrapnel into the advancing line. He landed among them, blade flashing, movements economical and final. A rifle clattered to the deck. A body followed. The broker barked orders, adjusting formations. "Contain him." Containment failed. The human flowed through the melee, never staying where he was expected to be, always appearing where the line was weakest. He disarmed one attacker and used their weapon to disable another. He ducked beneath a swing, struck a joint, vanished into smoke. One by one the privateers recalculated. Confidence drained from their movements. Their shots became reactive instead of predictive. The broker backed away, horror creeping into his voice. "He's not fighting us," he said. "He's editing us." The human emerged from the smoke behind the broker, blade at his throat. "Contract's void," the human said quietly. The broker froze. "Wait," he gasped. "We can renegotiate." The human considered him for a heartbeat. Then he struck, precise and mercifully brief. Silence fell again, broken only by distant alarms and the hiss of venting smoke. The concourse was littered with bodies and abandoned weapons. The human stood alone at its center, untouched. Station security finally arrived, skidding to a halt at the edge of the carnage. They did not advance. They did not raise weapons. The human walked past them without a glance. In a quiet alcove near an emergency hatch, he paused and rolled back his sleeve. The skin was slick with drying blood. He took out the tool once more and carved another line beside the last. This one was longer. The campaign concluded. He sealed the cut and pulled the sleeve down just as the station's public channel crackled to life. An automated voice attempted composure. "All personnel," it announced, "be advised. Threat classification has been updated." The human smiled faintly. He stepped through the hatch and into the waiting dark, leaving behind a station that would never again mistake laughter for safety. The emergency hatch sealed behind him with a muted thud, cutting off the station's alarms as cleanly as a closing eye. The access tunnel beyond was narrow and unlit, its walls stained with the residue of forgotten repairs. The human moved through it by memory alone, guided by instincts sharpened in places far less forgiving than Kepri Station. His shuttle waited at the far end, matte black and unregistered, its hull scarred in ways that told a story no database would ever hold. As he climbed aboard, the internal lights flickered on, revealing a cockpit stripped of ornament and excess. Everything inside existed for one purpose: continuation. He strapped in and exhaled, the tension of the last hour settling into something heavier and older. His forearm throbbed beneath the bandage, not from pain but from accumulation. Another line added. Another chapter closed. The comm panel blinked to life without prompting. "You were warned," a voice said, calm and distorted, layered with the weight of institutional authority. "Your survival destabilizes the balance." The human did not look at the source of the transmission. He powered up the engines instead. Balance is what failed first, he replied. You were meant to be a solution, the voice continued. A final measure. Not a legacy. The shuttle disengaged from the dock, drifting free of the station's shadow. Through the canopy, Kepri Station loomed, scarred and shaken, its lights flickering like a city recovering from an earthquake. I was never meant to be remembered, the human said. That part worked. The voice paused, recalibrating. You are alone. The human smiled, faint and genuine this time. No, he said. I'm unaccounted for. The transmission cut. The shuttle's engines flared, carrying him into open space. Stars stretched into luminous threads as he jumped, leaving behind not just the station, but the story the galaxy preferred to tell itself. Far from Kepri, in a chamber buried beneath layers of classified architecture, analysts stared at rapidly updating threat projections. Human. Singular. Active. Uncontainable. The algorithms struggled, models collapsing under variables they were never designed to process. One analyst broke the silence. He's not building a force, they said. He's moving alone. Another shook their head. That's worse. Back aboard the shuttle, the human let the autopilot take over and rolled up his sleeve. He traced the scars with his fingers, not counting, not reminiscing, just acknowledging. Each line represented an ending. Not of lives, but of things that had believed themselves eternal. He thought of the laughter in the bar. How easy it had been. How familiar. A soft chime sounded from the console. An incoming message, unsecured, old protocol. He frowned and accepted it. The bartender's face appeared, one eye bloodshot, the other steady. They're talking about you, the Draxian said. Every channel. Every shadow market. The human nodded. They always do. They want to know what you are, the bartender continued. What to call you. The human considered that. They can call me whatever helps them sleep. The bartender hesitated. You coming back? The human glanced at the stars ahead, then at the scars behind him. No, he said. But someone else will. The channel closed. The shuttle adjusted course, angling toward a region of space marked only by absence. No trade lanes. No treaties. Just quiet. As the stars slid by, the human's expression hardened, not with anger but with resolve. The galaxy had laughed once. It would not make that mistake again. Somewhere, a warlord would pause before mocking a quiet figure. Some mercenary would hesitate before pulling a trigger. Some archive would quietly unlock a file it had sworn would never be opened. The human settled back into his seat, one hand resting over the satchel, the other steady on the controls. He was not a hero. He was not a myth. He was a reminder. And as his shuttle vanished into the dark, the galaxy began counting scars of its own, realizing too late that the most dangerous predators were the ones who did not need to announce themselves. The laughter ended. The reckoning did not.